Captain Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his ship's bridge, watching the last alien ships disappear into the dark space ahead. The blue and silver vessels of the Galactic Council had just delivered the worst news in human history. After 3 long years of meetings and talks, the aliens had given up on humanity. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Jake's crew watched him carefully, waiting for orders. They all knew what had just happened, but nobody wanted to be the first to speak about it. Commander Lisa Brooks walked up to Jake with a datapad in her hands. Her face was serious and tired. She had been in charge of talking with the aliens for months, trying to make them understand why humans could not accept their demands. "Sir, we just got the final message from Earth Command," Lisa said in a low voice. "The Council has officially ended all relations with humanity. No more trade deals, no more sharing of technology, and no more protection under galactic law." Jake turned away from the window and looked at his crew. These were good people who had served humanity well in the stars. They had explored new worlds, built colonies, and defended human interests across the galaxy. Now they were being told they were on their own. What exactly did the Council say in their final message? Jake asked. Lisa looked down at her datapad and read the alien words that had been translated into English. They said that humanity has proven to be too aggressive and too focused on military expansion. They believe we cannot be trusted to follow their rules of harmony and peace. They have decided to remove us from the galactic community for the safety of all other species. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. For 3 years, the Council had demanded that humanity stop building new ships, stop expanding to new worlds, and stop developing better weapons. They wanted humans to accept their system of controlled growth and limited freedom. They called it harmony, but Jake knew it was really about control. The aliens had their own way of doing things. They believed that all species should work together under strict rules. No one was allowed to become too powerful or too independent. Everyone had to ask permission before making big decisions. Everyone had to share their technology and resources with the group, but humans were different. They had spent thousands of years fighting for their freedom on Earth. They had built their civilization through competition and innovation. When they finally reached the stars, they brought that same spirit with them. They were not going to give up their independence just to make the aliens happy. "What about our colonies?" Jake asked. "What's happening to our people out there?" Lisa flipped to another page on her datapad. All Outer Rim settlements are reporting increased attacks from pirate groups. Without Council protection, we're easy targets. The aliens who used to trade with us have stopped coming. Our supply lines are being cut off. Jake nodded slowly. This was exactly what the Council had warned would happen. They had said that without their protection, humanity would be destroyed by the many dangerous species that lived in the galaxy. They had made it sound like humans were helpless children who needed adult supervision, but Jake knew better. Humans had survived ice ages, world wars, and the journey to the stars. They had not done it by asking for permission or following someone else's rules. They had done it by fighting for what they believed in and never giving up. On the planet below Jake's ship, the human colony of New Arizona was facing its own crisis. Colony Administrator Dan Cooper was meeting with his council in the main government building. The room was full of worried faces and nervous voices. "The supply ships from the Council worlds have stopped coming," reported Supply Chief Mary Johnson. "We have enough food and medicine for maybe 6 months. After that, we'll have to find new sources or start rationing." Don looked around the table at the people who had helped him build this colony from nothing. They had turned a dead rock into a thriving community of 50,000 people. They had built farms, factories, and schools. They had created a piece of humanity among the stars. "What about the mining operations?" Don asked. "The Zephyrian traders who bought our metals have canceled all contracts," said Mining Director Tom Wilson. "They're afraid of being punished by the Council for dealing with us." Don stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the colony's main street. He could see families walking together, children playing in the parks, and workers heading home after their shifts. These people had trusted him to keep them safe and prosperous. Now he had to decide their future. "We have a choice to make," Don said, turning back to his council. "We can try to contact the council and beg them to take us back. We can promise to follow all their rules and give up our independence. Maybe they'll forgive us and let us be their junior partners again." The room was silent. Everyone knew there was another option, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. "Or," Don continued, "we can show them what humanity is really capable of. We can prove that we don't need their protection or their permission to survive and thrive." "In this galaxy," Council Member Betty Clark spoke up. "Don, that sounds brave, but we're talking about our survival here. These pirates and hostile aliens have been kept away by Council law. Without that protection, they'll see us as easy prey?" "Maybe," Don replied. "But I'd rather die free than live as someone's pet." The debate went on for hours. Some council members wanted to negotiate with the aliens. Others wanted to fight for independence. Finally, Don called for a vote. "All in favor of crawling back to the council and begging for mercy, raise your hands," he said. Nobody moved. "All in favor of showing the galaxy what humanity can do when we're pushed into a corner, raise your hands." Every hand in the room went up. Back on Jake's ship, the crew was preparing for the journey home to Earth. They had been ordered to return and help plan humanity's response to the Council's abandonment. It would be a dangerous trip through space. That was no longer protected by galactic law. "Captain," called out Navigator Paul Martinez from his station, "I'm picking up 3 unidentified ships on our sensors. They're moving to intercept us." Jake walked over to the tactical display. The 3 ships were small and fast, typical of the pirate vessels that had been terrorizing human colonies. They had probably been waiting for the council ships to leave. Before making their move, "Red alert," Jake ordered. "All hands to battle stations, charge weapons and raise shields." The bridge lights dimmed and emergency alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Jake's crew moved quickly to their positions, preparing for what might be their first battle as an abandoned species. "Incoming transmission from the lead pirate ship," reported Communications Officer Linda Ross. "Put it on screen," Jake said. The ugly face of an alien pirate appeared on the main viewer. The creature had gray skin, yellow eyes, and sharp teeth. It was grinning with cruel pleasure. "Human ship, this is Captain Grix of the Bloody Claw. Your council protection is gone. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live as slaves." Jake stepped forward so the pirate could see him clearly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Defiance. You have 10 seconds to change course before we turn your ships into space dust." The pirate laughed, showing all of its sharp teeth. "Brave words for a species that just got kicked out of the galactic community. Let's see how tough you really are." The transmission ended and the pirate ship started moving toward Jake's vessel, but Jake was not worried. His ship was built for war with the latest human weapons and shields. These pirates were about to learn their first lesson about what humanity was capable of when they were no longer holding back to please the Council. "Fire at will," Jake ordered. The battle was over in minutes. The pirate ships never had a chance against human military technology. As Jake watched the debris floating in space, he realized that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to discover that abandoning humanity had been the biggest mistake the Council had ever made. Admiral Ron Clark stood in the middle of Earth's newest war room, surrounded by screens showing numbers that would have seemed impossible just 6 months ago. The room was deep underground, built quickly after the Council had abandoned humanity. Now it served as the command center for humanity's transformation from a protected species into something far more dangerous. "The shipyard production numbers are incredible," reported Chief Analyst Amy Foster as she walked up to Ryan with her daily report. "We've increased our shipbuilding by 400% since the Council left us. The Mars shipyards are working around the clock, and we've started 3 new construction sites on the moon." Ryan nodded as he studied the tactical displays that covered the walls. Each screen showed different aspects of humanity's rapid military buildup: new weapons factories, training centers for soldiers, and research labs working on projects that would have been forbidden under Council law. "What about the new weapon systems?" Ryan asked. Amy smiled as she pulled up another set of numbers. The plasma cannon project is ahead of schedule. Our weapons are already more powerful than anything the individual council species have, Doctor. Martinez says we'll have the first prototype ships equipped with them within a month. Ryan felt a grim satisfaction as he looked at the data. The council had made a terrible mistake when they judged humanity. They had assumed that without their guidance and protection, humans would collapse into chaos and confusion. Instead, they had unleashed humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and overcome any challenge through determination and hard work. 6 months ago, humanity had been dependent on alien technology and protection. They had followed council rules about weapon development and military expansion. They had accepted limits on their growth and ambitions. But the moment the council abandoned them, all those restrictions disappeared. "Sir," called out communications. Officer Brad Williams as he entered the war room with urgent news. "We've intercepted enemy communications from the Zephyrian Empire. They're planning to test our defenses by attacking the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Ryan walked over to the star map that dominated the center of the room. Kepler 442b was one of humanity's most important mining operations. The colony there produced rare metals that were essential for building advanced spacecraft. If the Zephyrians could capture or destroy it, they would deal a serious blow to humanity's war effort. "How many ships are they sending?" Ryan asked. "Intelligence estimates a full battle fleet," Brad replied. "At least 50 warships, including 3 of their heavy cruisers. They're expecting to find a defenseless mining operation with maybe a few security ships." Ryan smiled coldly. "Let them come. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity." The Zephyrians were one of the more aggressive species in the galaxy. They had been held back by council law from attacking human colonies, but now they saw an opportunity to grab valuable territory and resources. They thought humans were weak and helpless without alien protection. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting Mars, Dr. Helen Moore was working on projects that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Her laboratory was filled with equipment that had been built using both human engineering and captured alien technology. But her team had gone far beyond simply copying what the aliens had made. "The quantum field is holding steady," she announced to her research team as they watched their latest experiment. "We've successfully created a stable dimensional manipulation system. No alien species has ever achieved this level of technological integration." Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Stone, looked up from his computer screen where complex equations filled the display. "The energy requirements are incredible, but manageable. We could theoretically install this system on our largest warships." Helen nodded as she watched the test chamber where space itself seemed to bend and twist. "The council wanted us to embrace their idea of harmony. Instead, we've embraced innovation. They're going to regret abandoning us." The breakthrough her team had achieved was based on theories that human scientists had been developing for decades. The council had always discouraged such research, claiming it was too dangerous and aggressive. They preferred species to focus on peaceful technologies that supported their vision of galactic harmony, but humanity had never stopped pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Even while following council rules, human scientists had continued their theoretical work in secret. Now, with the restrictions gone, they were free to turn those theories into reality. "Dr. Moore," called out research assistant Lisa Park from across the laboratory, "the test results are confirmed. We can phase solid matter in and out of normal space-time. The implications for both defense and offense are staggering." Helen walked over to examine the data. What her team had accomplished would revolutionize space warfare. Ships equipped with this technology could become temporarily intangible, allowing them to pass through enemy fire and solid obstacles. They could appear behind enemy formations and strike without warning. "How long until we can install this on a warship?" Helen asked. "The engineering team estimates 3 weeks for the first prototype installation," Kevin replied. "Captain Thompson has volunteered his ship, the UES Thunderbolt, for the first field test." Helen smiled. Perfect. Let's make sure it's ready before the Zephyrians arrive at Kepler 442. I want their first encounter with this technology to be their last. Back on Earth, the transformation of human society was happening at an incredible pace. Factories that had produced consumer goods were now making weapons and military equipment. Universities that had focused on peaceful research were now developing new military technologies. The entire human race was mobilizing for war. President Carol Hughes stood before a joint session of Congress, preparing to address not just the lawmakers but the entire human population through live broadcasts to every colony and settlement. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice strong and confident. "6 months ago, the Galactic Council abandoned us because they said we were too aggressive, too focused on military power instead of peaceful harmony. They expected us to collapse without their protection and guidance." The Congress chamber was silent as everyone waited for her next words. "But we have not collapsed," she continued. "We have grown stronger. We have built more ships in 6 months than we built in the previous 6 years. We have developed new technologies that surpass anything the Council species possess. We have proven that humanity doesn't need anyone's permission to thrive among the stars." The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from every human world and colony were on their feet, cheering for the president and the future she was describing. "The Council thought they were punishing us," President Hughes said once the applause died down. "Instead, they have freed us from the chains that were holding us back. They have given us the greatest gift possible, the chance to show the galaxy what humanity can really accomplish when we're not asking for permission." On the industrial world of New Detroit, factory manager Sam Martinez was overseeing the production of the new generation of human warships. The assembly lines never stopped, running 24 hours a day to meet the demands of humanity's military expansion. "How many ships will we complete this month?" Sam asked his production supervisor, Janet Miller. 47 combat vessels of various classes," Janet replied as she checked her production charts. "That's more than we used to build in a full year under the Council trade restrictions." Sam nodded with satisfaction. "The Council limited our access to certain materials and technologies, claiming it was for galactic stability. Really, they just wanted to keep us dependent on them." The irony was not lost on him. The Council had tried to control humanity by limiting their access to advanced materials and manufacturing techniques. But humans had always been resourceful. When they couldn't get what they needed through trade, they learned to make it themselves. "Sir," called out scanner operator Mike Davis from the monitoring station, "we're detecting alien reconnaissance ships testing our outer defenses. They're trying to get sensor readings on our new ship designs." Sam walked over to the tactical display. 3 small alien ships were conducting what appeared to be intelligence-gathering missions near human space. They were probably trying to assess humanity's military capabilities before planning their attacks. "Let them look," Sam said with a grin. "Every scan they take gives us more information about their sensor technology. By the time they realize what they're really looking at, it'll be too late." The aliens were making the same mistake the Council had made. They were underestimating humanity's ability to learn and adapt. Every probe they sent, every scan they conducted, every reconnaissance mission they flew was providing human scientists with valuable data about alien technology and capabilities. "The student is about to become the teacher," Sam said as he watched the alien ships retreat back to their own space. "And the galaxy is about to learn some very hard lessons about what happens when you abandon humanity." The transformation was complete. In just 6 months, humanity had gone from a dependent species following alien rules to a military power that was making the entire galaxy nervous. The Council had abandoned them, expecting them to fail. Instead, the Zephyrian assault fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442b system, expecting to find a defenseless human mining colony. Admiral Vexkir stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching his sensors display what appeared to be a handful of small human ships orbiting the planet. "This will be easier than I thought," Vexkir said to his tactical officer. "Intelligence reports were correct. The humans have only a few security vessels protecting their mining operation. We'll crush them quickly and claim this system for the Empire. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of 52 warships, including 3 massive heavy cruisers that could destroy entire cities with their main guns. They had been waiting for months for the Council's protection to be removed from human space. Now they could finally expand their territory without fear of galactic law. What Admiral Vexkir didn't know was that the human ships his sensors were detecting were not the old security vessels he expected. They were the newest generation of human warships, equipped with technology that no alien species had ever seen before. Captain Tony Adams stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the Zephyrian fleet advance toward the mining colony. His ship was one of 12 human vessels that had been secretly stationed in the system, waiting for exactly this moment. They had been testing their new weapons and defense systems for weeks, preparing for humanity's first major battle as an independent species. "All ships, this is Retribution Actual," Tony spoke into his communication system. "The aliens are moving into attack formation. Prepare to show them what human engineering can really do." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, following procedures they had practiced hundreds of times. These men and women had trained for months to use the new quantum phase technology that Dr. Moore's team had developed. Today would be the first real test of humanity's revolutionary military advancement. "Captain," called out Weapons Officer Sarah Kim from her station, "all quantum phase systems are online and ready. The dimensional manipulation field is stable." Tony nodded as he watched the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were moving in a standard attack formation, spreading out to surround the planet. They clearly expected this to be a quick and easy victory against a few poorly armed human vessels. "Activate quantum phase shields," Tony ordered. "Begin Operation Reckoning." Across the human fleet, something impossible began to happen. The 12 human ships started to flicker in and out of normal spacetime, becoming ghostly and translucent. The Zephyrian sensors lost track of them as they phased into a different dimension where physical matter could not touch them. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Vexkir watched in confusion as his sensors showed the human ships disappearing and reappearing in seemingly random locations. "What kind of trick is this?" he demanded. "Are they using some kind of cloaking technology?" "No, sir," replied his sensor operator, his voice full of fear. "They're actually shifting in and out of our dimension. This technology should be impossible." The human ships moved through the Zephyrian formation like ghosts, passing through the alien vessels without any physical contact. Then, when they reached perfect attack positions behind the enemy fleet, they phased back into normal space and opened fire with their new plasma weapons. The first Zephyrian ship to be destroyed was a heavy cruiser that had been leading the attack. The UES Thunderbolt materialized directly behind it and fired 3 plasma torpedoes into its engine section. The alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending debris spinning through space. "Impossible!" Admiral Vexkir shouted as he watched his most powerful ship get torn apart. "No species has ever developed dimensional manipulation technology." Captain Tony Adams heard the alien admiral's broadcast on the open communications channel. He decided to respond personally, wanting to send a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. "This is Captain Tony Adams of the United Earth Space Forces," Tony said calmly. "You underestimated us, Admiral. The Council taught us that survival requires strength, not harmony. Today you learn what that means." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind enemy formations and delivering devastating strikes with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The Zephyrians tried to fight back, but their conventional weapons passed harmlessly through the phased human vessels. Lieutenant Commander Mike Roberts, piloting the UES Falcon, watched his targeting computer lock onto a Zephyrian destroyer. "Target acquired," he reported over the COM system, engaging with quantum torpedoes. The Falcon phased back into normal space just long enough to fire its weapons, then immediately shifted back into the quantum dimension to avoid return fire. The Zephyrian ship tried to turn and flee, but the human torpedo struck its main reactor. The explosion lit up the darkness of space. Within 2 hours, the entire Zephyrian fleet was either destroyed or in full retreat. Only 7 alien ships managed to escape the battle, and they were badly damaged. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. On the surface of Kepler 442b, the human colonists watched the battle through their telescopes and sensor arrays. Mining supervisor Janet Cooper stood in the colony's observation deck, watching the flashes of light in the sky that marked the destruction of alien warships. "I can't believe it," she said to her assistant Bob Martinez. 12 human ships just destroyed an entire Zephyrian battle fleet. 6 months ago, we would have been hiding in our bunkers and calling for council help. Bob nodded as he watched the last of the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The council always said we were too aggressive, too focused on military power. Maybe they were right, but it looks like that's exactly what we needed. The news of the victory at Kepler 442b spread across human space within hours. On Earth, President Carol Hughes called an emergency session of Congress to address the nation and the galaxy. Today, humanity proved that we don't need the council's protection, she announced to the packed chamber. We have become the protectors of our own destiny. The species that abandoned us as too dangerous have learned what it means to threaten human lives and human freedom. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Other aggressive species that had been planning to attack human colonies suddenly began to reconsider their strategies. The humans were no longer the weak species that needed protection from stronger neighbors. On the Aquatic Confederation homeworld, Fleet Admiral Glurith studied the battle reports with growing concern. "The humans have developed technology that surpasses anything we've seen," he told his council. "Dimensional manipulation was considered impossible by our best scientists." "What does this mean for our expansion plans?" asked one of the council members. "It means we need to be very careful about how we deal with humanity," Glurith replied. "They're not the same species the council abandoned 6 months ago." Back in human space, engineer Sam Martinez was already working on improvements to the quantum phase technology. The battle at Kepler 442b had provided valuable data about how the system performed under combat conditions. "The power consumption was higher than expected," he reported to his design team. "But the tactical advantages are incredible. We can strike anywhere without warning and retreat without taking damage." His assistant, Dr. Lisa Park, was studying the sensor data from the battle. "The Zephyrians never adapted to our phasing ability. They kept trying to use conventional tactics against unconventional technology." "That's going to be the pattern," Sam replied. "These alien species have been using the same military strategies for thousands of years. They're not prepared for the kind of innovation that humanity brings to warfare." The victory at Kepler 442b was more than just a military success. It was a message to the entire galaxy that humanity had not only survived the Council's abandonment, but had thrived. The species that had been dismissed as too aggressive had proven that sometimes aggression was exactly what the situation required. As Captain Tony Adams filed his battle report, he included a note that would be remembered in human military history. The enemy expected to find sheep. Instead, they found wolves. Let the galaxy take note. Humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist among the stars. The age of human independence had begun with a victory that would be talked about for generations. The Council had abandoned them, but humanity had not abandoned itself. They had chosen power over harmony, and that choice had just saved their civilization from destruction. 2 years had passed since the Council abandoned humanity, and the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Julie Parker stood in the marble halls of the Galactic Council chambers, a building that had once seemed impossible for humans to enter as equals. Now she was here not as a beggar asking for help, but as the representative of a military power that had the entire galaxy talking. The council members sitting around the massive circular table looked very different from the confident aliens who had dismissed humanity just 2 years ago. Their faces showed worry and fear as they watched Julie walk to the center of the chamber. The same creatures who had once called humans too primitive and aggressive now treated them with nervous respect. "Honored council members," Julie began, her voice carrying the confidence of a species that had proven itself through victory after victory. "You called this emergency meeting to discuss what you call the human problem. I'm here to tell you that humanity is not your problem anymore. We are your new reality." The council leader, a tall insect-like being named Vexthel, clicked his sharp mouthparts nervously. His species had once been among the most powerful in the galaxy, but even they were now worried about human expansion. "Admiral Parker," Vexthel said in his translated voice, "your species has become a threat to galactic peace. In just 2 years, you have conquered 12 star systems, destroyed 6 different pirate fleets, and developed technology that violates the natural laws of physics." "This cannot continue," Julie smiled coldly. "You mean we've defended ourselves against attacks and expanded into empty space that nobody else was using? You're upset because we've been successful without your permission." Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some were species that had tried to attack human colonies and been defeated. Others were former allies of the Council who were now questioning whether they had chosen the right side. "Your rapid expansion threatens the balance of power," argued the representative from the Crystal Confederation. "No single species should have so much military strength." "You had no problem with the balance of power when you were the ones with all the strength," Julie replied. "The only thing that's changed is that humans are no longer willing to be your junior partners." The truth was that humanity had not just survived the Council's abandonment, but had become the most dynamic force in the galaxy. Human colonies were growing faster and becoming more successful than any other species settlements. Human technology was advancing at a rate that amazed even human scientists. Human military forces were winning every battle they fought, meanwhile, across the galaxy. On the agricultural world of New Montana, Governor Pete Anderson was watching his colony set new records for food production. The terraforming project he was overseeing had turned a barren planet into the most productive farming world in known space. "The soil analysis results are incredible," reported agricultural specialist Nina White as she handed Pete her daily report. "We've increased crop yields by 300% using our new bio-enhancement methods." The Council's old restrictions on genetic modification were holding back agricultural development across the galaxy. Pete nodded as he looked out over the vast fields of genetically improved crops that stretched to the horizon. Without the Council's rules limiting human innovation, his agricultural teams had developed farming techniques that could feed entire star systems. "What about the water management system?" Pete asked. "Running perfectly," Nina replied with pride. "Our atmospheric processors are creating more rainfall than the planet has seen in millions of years. The ecosystem is actually improving as we expand our farming operations." This was happening on dozens of human worlds. While other species struggled with slow growth and limited resources, human colonies were thriving. They were developing new technologies, discovering better ways to live on alien worlds, and creating wealth at a rate that made other civilizations jealous. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Roy Davis from the colony's main building, "we're receiving requests from 17 different alien species asking for trade agreements. They want to buy our food and farming technology," Pete smiled. 2 years ago, aliens had refused to trade with humans because the Council had forbidden it. Now they were begging to buy human products because their own civilizations couldn't match human efficiency and innovation. Back at the Council chambers, the debate was getting more intense. Several member species were openly questioning whether humanity should be invited back into the galactic community, but under very different terms than before. "They have medical technology we desperately need," admitted the representative from the Healing Guild. "Our research into genetic diseases has been stuck for decades. While they've developed cures for conditions we thought were impossible to treat, their manufacturing methods are revolutionizing industrial production," added the spokesperson for the Builders Alliance. "They can construct space stations in half the time it takes us, using half the resources." Julie listened to the aliens talk about human achievements with growing satisfaction. These were the same species that had said humans were too primitive to be trusted with advanced technology. Now they were admitting that human technology was more advanced than their own. "The question," said Vexthal, trying to regain control, "of the meeting is whether humanity can be trusted to use their power responsibly. Their military expansion suggests they are preparing for conquest. We're preparing for survival," Julie corrected. "Every ship we build, every weapon we develop, every colony we establish makes it harder for species like yours to threaten human lives. You abandoned us because you thought we were too weak to survive. Now you're afraid because we're too strong to control." The alien representatives looked at each other nervously. They were caught between their fear of human power and their need for human technology and resources. Some species were already secretly negotiating trade deals with human colonies, despite the Council's official disapproval on the industrial world of New Birmingham. Factory supervisor Carl Thompson was overseeing the production of humanity's newest spacecraft designs. The assembly lines were producing ships that combined human engineering with captured alien technology, creating vessels that surpassed anything else in the galaxy. "The new cruiser design is ready for testing," reported Chief Engineer Mary Rodriguez. "We've integrated quantum phase generators with traditional plasma weapons. The result is a ship that can fight in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Carl watched the massive spacecraft take shape on the assembly line. "How does it compare to the Council's best warships?" "There's no comparison," Mary replied with confidence. "This ship could defeat an entire Council fleet by itself. We've gone beyond simply copying alien technology. We're creating something entirely new. This was the pattern across human space. While other species relied on technology that was thousands of years old, humans were constantly improving and innovating. They took the best ideas from every civilization they encountered and made them better." "Sir," called out Security Chief Alex Martinez from his monitoring station, "we're detecting unusual activity in the outer system. It looks like a Council spy ship trying to get sensor readings on our new vessels." Carl smiled. "Let them look. By the time they figure out what they're seeing, we'll have moved on to even better designs." Back at the Council meeting, the discussion was reaching a critical point. Several species were threatening to leave the Council if they didn't find a way to work with humanity. Others were demanding military action to stop human expansion. "We must make a choice," Vexthal announced to the chamber. "Either we find a way to contain humanity's growth, or we accept them as an equal power in galactic affairs." Julie stood up to address the entire assembly. "You can't contain us anymore. That ship sailed when you abandoned us 2 years ago. The only choice you have is whether you want to work with us as partners or continue to see us as enemies. What are your terms?" asked the representative from the Trading Federation, a species that had been hit hard by the loss of human markets. "More junior partner status," Julie said firmly. "No more restrictions on human technology development. No more limits on where we can build colonies. If you want to work with humanity, it will be as equals." The chamber fell silent as the aliens considered her words. They were being offered a chance to work with the most successful civilization in the galaxy, but they would have to give up their position as the dominant powers, the Council that had abandoned humanity because they feared human strength was now facing a choice: accept humanity as an equal partner, or watch their own civilizations fall behind as humans continued to grow stronger and more independent. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and there was no going back. The emergency alarm screaming through the Galactic Council chambers had never sounded so desperate. Fleet Admiral Chris Torres received the Council's plea for help while standing on the bridge of humanity's newest super dreadnought, the UES Dominion. The massive ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, equipped with quantum phase technology and weapons that could tear apart entire fleets. "Sir, we're receiving broadcasts from across Council space," reported Communications Officer Linda Ross, her voice tight with urgency. "The Void Swarm has emerged from dark space. They're destroying everything in their path." Chris looked at the tactical displays showing the ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. The Void Swarm was a collection of massive bioships that consumed entire civilizations, turning planets into empty husks. They appeared every few thousand years, destroyed whatever they found, then disappeared back into the darkness between. Galaxies, what's the status of the Council fleets? Chris asked. 3 entire battle groups have been completely destroyed, Linda replied as she monitored the emergency transmissions. The remaining Council forces are in full retreat. Their weapons can barely scratch the swarm ships. Chris studied the tactical data flowing across his screens. The Council's combined fleets represented the military might of over 100 different species. They had thousands of ships and weapons that had been developed over millions of years. But they were being destroyed by an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. "Sir," called out scanner operator Mike Davis from his station. "We're receiving." A direct communication from the Council leader himself. They're asking for immediate military assistance. The irony was not lost on Chris. 2 years ago, these same aliens had declared humanity too dangerous to remain in galactic civilization. They had abandoned humans to face pirates and hostile species alone. Now they were begging for the protection of the species they had rejected. "Put the Council leader on screen," Chris ordered. The face of Vexthal appeared on the main viewer. But he looked very different from the proud alien who had dismissed humanity years before. His features showed fear and desperation as he spoke. "Admiral Torres, the Void Swarm has returned earlier than predicted. Our forces cannot stop them. We are formally requesting immediate military aid from the human fleet." Chris looked at the alien leader who had once called humans too aggressive and violent for galactic society. "That's an interesting request, Vexthal. The last time we spoke, you said humanity was a threat to galactic peace." "Please," Vexthal replied, his pride clearly broken. "Our differences can be settled later. Right now, the entire galaxy faces extinction. Your quantum technology may be our only hope." Chris turned to his tactical officer. "What's our fleet strength?" 47 capital ships in the immediate area, reported Tactical Officer Paul Martinez. "Another 130 vessels can be here within 6 hours if we call them in from patrol duties." The numbers were staggering. In just 2 years, humanity had built a fleet that rivaled the combined forces of the entire Galactic Council. But even with their advanced technology, they would be facing an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations. "Sir," Linda called out urgently. "We're receiving surrender broadcasts from multiple Council fleets. The Void Swarm is overwhelming their defenses faster than expected." Chris made his decision. Despite everything the Council had done to humanity, he would not let entire civilizations be destroyed while he had the power to help them. "All ships, prepare for Operation Salvation," he ordered across the fleet communications system. "We're going to show the galaxy what real harmony looks like." The human fleet moved toward the battle zone with a speed and coordination that amazed even their own crews. Unlike the Council forces that had been trained to follow rigid battle plans, human commanders were taught to adapt and improvise in real time. Within hours, human ships were engaging the Void Swarm in battles that would be remembered for thousands of years. The bioships were massive creatures the size of cities, with weapons that could destroy planets. But they had never faced an enemy that could phase in and out of normal space. Captain Susan Clark, commanding the UES Thunder, watched her ship phase through a swarm vessel's armor and emerge inside its biological structure. "Fire quantum torpedoes directly into the creature's nervous system," she ordered. The alien bioship convulsed as human weapons tore apart its internal organs. It had survived millions of years by being nearly indestructible from the outside, but it had no defense against enemies that could attack from within on the surface of the planet Zarian. Dr. Rachel Kim was coordinating humanity's scientific response to the swarm invasion. Her team had been studying the creature's biology using sensor data from the battle. "The harmonic frequency is destabilizing their neural networks," she reported to the fleet commanders. "We're literally using their own biology against them. Their collective consciousness makes them strong, but it also makes them vulnerable to the right kind of interference." Dr. Kim's breakthrough came from understanding something the Council species had never realized. The Void Swarm was not just a collection of individual creatures. They shared a collective mind that allowed them to coordinate perfectly. But that same connection could be turned into a weapon. If we can disrupt their neural frequency on a large enough scale, she continued, we can cause the entire swarm to lose coordination. They'll start attacking each other instead of us. Fleet Admiral Torres received this information just as his ship was engaging 3 swarm vessels simultaneously. All ships prepare to implement Dr. Kim's harmonic disruption protocol. Target their neural centers with quantum resonance bursts. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human fleet, using their advanced technology and innovative tactics, began systematically destroying swarm ships that had seemed invincible. More importantly, they coordinated their attacks with the surviving Council forces, proving that humanity had never been opposed to cooperation, only to domination. Commander Brian Foster, piloting the UES Falcon, found himself fighting alongside a damaged Council cruiser. The alien ship was barely functional, but its crew was still trying to fight. "This is Commander Foster to Council vessel Harmony's Edge," he broadcast. "Stay close to us, we'll cover your retreat." The alien captain's response was filled with surprise and gratitude. "Human ship, why are you protecting us? Your people have every reason to let us face this alone." "Because that's not who we are," Brian replied as his ship phased behind a swarm vessel and destroyed it with a perfectly placed shot. "We fight to protect life, not to settle old grudges." Within days, the impossible had happened. The Void Swarm, an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years, was either destroyed or retreating back into dark space. The combined forces of humanity and the Council had achieved what no single species had ever accomplished, but the victory came with a price. The old galactic order was gone forever. The Council could no longer claim to be the protectors of civilization. That role now belonged to the species they had abandoned. President Steve Campbell stood before representatives from every species in the galaxy as he signed the new galactic accords. The ceremony was being broadcast to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "The Council abandoned humanity because they feared our strength," he said to the assembled crowd. "But strength without purpose is meaningless. Today we prove that humanity's power serves not just ourselves, but all who seek freedom among the stars." The new treaty was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the Council's rigid hierarchy, it established a system of mutual cooperation between equal partners. Species could develop their own technologies and expand at their own pace, as long as they respected the rights of others. "The age of asking permission to exist is over," President Campbell continued. "The age of earning the right to thrive has begun." As the ceremony concluded, Fleet Admiral Torres received reports that 12 new alien species were requesting to join the human sphere of influence. They had seen what humanity could accomplish and wanted to be part of it. "Sir," reported his aide, "the Aquatic Confederation has formally requested a defense treaty with Earth. They're offering to share their underwater city technology in exchange for protection." Chris smiled as he looked out at the stars. "Tell them we're interested, but make it clear that we're offering partnership, not protection. The galaxy has learned what happens when strong species try to control weaker ones. The Void Swarm invasion had changed everything. The Council species that had once looked down on humanity now looked up to them as saviors. The civilization that had been abandoned for being too aggressive had become the greatest defenders of galactic peace. Humanity had chosen power over harmony when the Council abandoned them. But in the end, they had discovered that true harmony could only exist when it was defended by those with the strength and courage to protect it. The galaxy would never be the same.